This is Eye on Africa. Good evening. I'm Nadia Massi. The top stories tonight on the continent. France warns the United Nations mission in Mali is in danger, a day after 4 peacekeepers were killed in an IED attack. A powerful union in Tunisia throws its weight behind the families demanding justice for relatives who died at sea. Protests were held this Tuesday. And fears grow that dissenting voices will be silenced in Uganda as a controversial new internet law takes effect. Our top story this Tuesday, the French ambassador to the United Nations has warned that the UN mission in Mali is, quote, in danger, this one day after 4 UN peacekeepers were killed in an IED explosion. He made those comments at a session of the Security Council that is dedicated to discussing the unrest in Mali. And as our correspondent Sam Bradpeace now reports, there were some heated exchanges in that meeting between the French and the Malian delegates.
This UN Security Council meeting began with a presentation from the head of the UN's mission in the country. He said that Mali was making some progress towards elections after those coups d'etat in 2020 and 2021. But he did note, on the other hand, that the security situation in the country continues to deteriorate, notably due to the activities of al-Qaeda-affiliated group Nusrat al-Islam. The main takeaway, though, from this UN Security Council session was the continued spat between Mali and France. The Malian foreign minister has claimed since August to have evidence that France has been supporting terror groups in the country and has been calling for a special UN session to review this evidence. However, during this UN meeting, he didn't present any evidence himself, and the French representative denied all claims that France had been helping terror groups. In fact, he noted further that more than 50 French troops have been killed in Mali prior to the withdrawal of the French forces back in August. It looks unlikely for the time being that any special session to review this evidence that the Malian foreign minister claims to have will ever actually take place.
Sam Bradpeace for us there. Next, we head to Tunisia, where protests have been held this Tuesday demanding an investigation into the deaths of 8 migrants at sea. Their bodies were recovered over a week ago, but the families say DNA tests were not done and the bodies were buried without being identified. Now those relatives do have the backing of one of Tunisia's most powerful unions, the UGTT, is calling for a general strike, arguing that authorities mishandled the case. Caroline Lamboulay has the report.
Revisiting slogans that toppled several dictators in the region in 2011, thousands of Tunisians demonstrated in the town of Zarzis on Tuesday. They called on the authorities to reveal the truth in the wake of a migrant shipwreck that rocked the town last month.
We want to know the truth. What happened was a crime committed by the state against the people of Zarzis. The bodies were buried without being identified and without any DNA testing.
There have been smaller protests in recent weeks, but the turnout on Tuesday was much higher. Residents responding to the powerful UGTT union's call for a general strike. Migrant shipwrecks off the coast of Tunisia are frequent. Dozens have died this year alone, but this incident has struck a nerve. The 18 people who were aboard the boat that capsized in late September were all from Zarzis. Anger bubbled up over the slow pace of search and rescue operations, and it boiled over when it emerged that the authorities had buried several people in a cemetery reserved for foreign migrants, usually from sub-Saharan Africa. Several bodies have since been exhumed to perform DNA testing. And on Monday, the Tunisian president called for further investigations into the incident. With several bodies still missing, protesters on Tuesday also called on the authorities to speed up search operations.
Next, there is renewed concern from the United Nations this Tuesday about the scale of the humanitarian crisis facing Somalia. UNICEF says the East African country now risks famine on a level not seen in half a century. Somalia has suffered 4 failed rainy seasons since the end of 2020, and roughly half its population is already being affected by drought. Now, media activists in Uganda have filed a court challenge to a controversial new internet law. The government says the law will help combat fake news, but activists say it will actually be used to silence journalists and political opponents of the government. Lauren Beshticker has the report.
Documents in hand, activists and members of the media headed to Uganda's constitutional court to file a legal challenge against the country's new internet law. They say the legislation, which was approved by the president last week, is a blatant attempt at curtailing freedom of speech and silencing political opposition.
Criminalization of writing, criminalization of sharing, criminalization of transmitting goes to the root of the right freedom of expression.
The Ugandan government says the law, an amendment to the Computer Misuse Act, will help combat the spread of rumors and fake news. It, for instance, requires individuals, including journalists, to seek permission before sharing information with a computer. But opposition and rights groups worry the law's vague language will allow authorities to selectively silence dissenting voices, especially after a government crackdown during last year's election, which also saw a countrywide social media blackout.
This law talks about public interest, which is not defined. So it's also ambiguous, it's subject to abuse by whoever wishes. And so the police will selectively apply it to target certain people.
Those convicted under the law will be barred from holding public office for 10 years. They also face a fine of up to $4,000 and up to 7 years in prison.
Time for some sports news now on the programme. The Senegalese footballer Sadio Mane was the runner-up at this year's Ballon d'Or ceremony. Now, he's only the second African player to reach the podium since George Weah won the prize in 1995. But perhaps more importantly, Mane was awarded the first ever Socrates Award on Monday night. This in recognition of his good works off the pitch. Our team in Senegal have been getting some reaction to the Stars' win on home turf in Dakar.
He truly is an example for the Senegalese and African youth in general. We shouldn't forget where we come from. And Sadio is truly the proof of that.
He built a hospital, schools, and I think even a mosque. And he's done other social actions too. Frankly, he's someone with a big heart.
We pray a lot for him. I hope he will continue to win other trophies. It's a source of great pride.
Well, we end the programme now in Nigeria, where virtual reality headsets are becoming increasingly popular among a rather unexpected strata of society. I'm talking about senior citizens living in care homes. Our team in Lagos has sent us this story.
This resident of retirement home in Lagos is taking a realization lesson through meditation. The headset helps her to see and repeat the movements. For over a year now, these residents have been discovering virtual reality. They are guided by Kunle Adewale, a multimedia artist. His workshop stimulates their memory.
But what we're doing now is really connecting them back, helping them to reintegrate and have an experience that is beautiful, that can help them to age gracefully, and then having a kind of something to hold on to as they age. Like, you know, I'm loved, I'm involved, I'm accepted, I'm included, I belong.
The Regina Mundi residence is run by this Catholic nun. Sister Antonia fights against isolation, but also the mistreatment of many elderly people. Both are taboo subjects in Nigeria and in Africa at large. Kunle test runs each virtual reality exercise at home before his workshops. His use of digital technology started after his stepmom suffered from a stroke and he had to find ways to interact with her. After her death, the former teacher specialized in alternative therapies.
Art transforms people to thinking about the positive in the moment. The positive things that come from the music, the positive that come from drawing, the colors, and expressing themselves. that moment is very, very important, and it can really help to change their perspective about life.
Kunle works in 3 other homes like this. By stimulating the residents' memories, he brings dignity to their end of life and softens the challenges that come with aging.
And I must say, I do love that report by our team in Nigeria. We'll leave it with that for this edition of Eye on Africa. Thanks for watching, and do stay with us here on France 24.
France 24, every art form.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
I'm Natalie Savaricas, and you'll usually find me in news, reporting on Greece's enduring financial turmoil and protests, but also the refugee emergency, here on France 24.
Natalie Savaricas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.